if you're eating in food banks, your children are going to be underweight. But that's not what the statistics bear out, Lisa, is it? Why?
No. I mean, this is, to be honest, health inequalities, it's always been a class issue in this country. When I was young, children were underweight because we didn't have access to, you know, probably the amounts of food that kids have today. But we can't just go on what was happening 50 years ago, because what is happening now is the cheapest food are the processed food. The cheapest food is
the high carbohydrate, the high sugar.
Yeah. And that's actually the stuff that parents will give their kids to fill them up.
I know.
Because if you haven't got a lot of money, I mean, anybody knows now, it's fruit, vegetables, eggs, these are not cheap. These are not cheap foods now.
I would say that in some ways, I'm interested to hear what you've got to think, you say about this, Ben, but in some ways, they're not the cheapest foods. I'm going to do that awful kind of, you know, that awful sort of middle-class woman thing here where I say, yes, but it's quite cheap to make a homemade vegetable soup and give your children oats for porridge. That's quite cheap. But I know it's more complicated than that.
Well, it is, but also, you know, I always refer to George Orwell on this point, because this is an issue that has been with us for a long, long time. And in 1931, in Road to Wigan Pier, George Orwell wrote about this same sort of middle-class view of the working class. Well, if they didn't spend all their money on coal, or, you know, the working class eat too much sugar, that's what the Daily Mail was saying in 1931. The working class eat too much sugar and, you know, they spend too much money on coal. And the argument that George Orwell made then, and I make now, and continue to make, is when you have got a rotten life, a bit of sugar in your tea will cheer you up.
But the trouble is, no one's having a bit of sugar in their tea.
No, but
now,
whatever it is, but the sugar in the 1930s was the equivalent, perhaps, to the pizza today, you know, or the high-fat cake or whatever.
It's comforting. But your point, Beverly, about the, you know, and I completely agree with you. It's ever so easy to go and make a vegetable soup.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at a conference about food poverty many years ago and said porridge, and a woman sitting next to me said, that's a terribly middle-class concept.
I know it is.
Yeah, it is.
But
it
it's
really
not.
Is.
But it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
No,
I was raised with my working-class mum making vegetable soups and porridge and home, and we had cakes, but she did homemade cakes.
Yeah.
We didn't have them every day. We just had them every now and
If you
again.
haven't got the facilities because you're living in a bedsit,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's only so much. Let's suppose you're in a bedsit that's damp, horrible, you can't afford to heat it, you're trying to make porridge with a kettle.
No.
You know, that's...
But then there's that but the thing is now is there are alternatives to porridge or whatever. Whereas when I was a kid, you know, we didn't have the alternative. You know, there was not lots of biscuits. You couldn't go in my fridge without my mum saying that you were allowed to go into it.
Yeah.
You know, you were eating whatever you was given, and that was it.
Absolutely.
And there wasn't a cake drawer or whatever. Whereas now, you know, you have to look at the manufacturers as well.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that they, you know, food is sort of pushed on people. So, you know, this is a much bigger issue that has been with us a long time.
Yeah.